Hi, I'm Phil Holden, and I want to show you a Bible web app that I've been working on. It's a bit different to other Bible web apps because it loads the whole Bible into memory, and it can search the whole Bible on every keystroke. So now I'm going to try and do a search for Jesus, so J and E-S-U-S, and you can see that on every keystroke, it was actually searching the whole Bible for what I was typing in. And if I wanted to change that to, say, Jesus and Peter, I can type in Peter, and this is searching from Genesis to Revelation, and it has every reference to Jesus and Peter in the Bible. So you can see there all the way from Matthew to Peter. Another thing I can do is narrow a search using a range. So I'm going to type in beginning. And you can see that gives me Genesis 1:1 and all the way through to Revelation. But there's too many references here for me to really look through. So I want to narrow this down, and I'm only interested in Genesis. And so I can use different abbreviations, so GN for Genesis, and then John for John, and 1 John, and 2 John, and 3 John, and Revelation. Okay, and so this is now giving me all the references to beginning from Genesis, and in John, and in Revelation. So you can see like 1 and 2 John are in there. And I could further narrow that by saying the beginning. But the is a very popular word. So if I want to find the beginning, I can then quote this string. And this will narrow it to only verses that have the beginning in there. And so you can see that much more quickly I'm into John. In the beginning was the word. The same was in the beginning with God. And we can shorten this range as well, because you can see that it's got 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John. So we could change that by saying 1 John, 2, 3 John, and that's going to be exactly the same range. So you can see got 1 John and 2 John, and it looks like 3 John doesn't have a reference to the beginning in there. So that's all very well. We've got our list of verses, but the problem is that each of these verses lack context. So often when we see these verses here, what we're actually catching is the middle of a paragraph. And when I see this in other Bible software, it means I often have to do a search with a different range so I can see these exact verses. So I wanted the ability to be able to peek before a verse, and you can do that with this app by using the cursor key. So if I use the left arrow key, I can see the verse which is before, and I can use the right arrow key to delete that verse, or I can use the down arrow key to see what's after, and the up arrow key to remove that. Now, having found these verses, I may want to save them. So I might be doing a Bible study on a certain subject, and I want to maintain a list of verses that I found useful. So in this case, maybe like John 15, 25 to 27. So I'm going to type that into the verse list. So John 25 to 27. One of the things I've worked quite hard at in the software is making it understand all the different kinds of abbreviations that you can have for books. So instead of John, you could have John, or you could have JHN, and it doesn't worry about what case it's in either. And the software also understands the different kinds of references you can have. For example, I can do Ecclesiastes and add this onto my verse list, and this is now giving me the whole book of Ecclesiastes. If I put a chapter in there, so if I say chapter 1, then it's going to give me only chapter 1 of Ecclesiastes. And I could say chapter 1 to chapter 2, that's giving me chapters 1 and 2. Or I could say chapter 1, verse 1 to 2, and that's giving me chapter 1 to 2. And then I could add on some comma ranges as well. So I could say 3 to 5 and verse 8. So there I've got Ecclesiastes 1 and 2, 3 to 5 and verse 8. This Bible software is made to be used live when you're preaching or when you're in a Bible study. You could have all the verses that you're preaching on or that you're using in a study, and every member of the group could have those verses visible. But they're also able to search around the Bible at the same time to find related things and related thoughts. As a preacher, I normally use Bible software when I'm preparing my sermon, and I then print out a verse list that I might be using in my sermon. But with software like this, I could actually have that verse list available before I preach and be even editing it right up to the last minute. And even in the middle of my sermon, I could probably find a verse using the search pane on the right without breaking my flow. You can find a link to this application below, and it's just this URL here, and you can also find the source code up on GitHub. If you want to find out about the latest developments with this software, then please follow me on Twitter. There should be a link below this video, and it's where I'll be announcing all the kind of latest developments and releases. So please retweet them to your friends. And also, I'm looking for help. I'm particularly looking for help with people who can help me to connect into the big Bible publishers, people like the publishers of the NIV, the publishers of the ESV. I really want to get this software used with some of the bigger translations, and these are huge organizations, and I don't really know where to connect into them. So I'm looking for helpful contacts within those organizations. Also really inspired by the work of the YouVersion Bible and how they've been able to get these contacts with these big organizations. And so if you're somebody who's working on the YouVersion, I would love to connect with you as well. Thank you very much for listening.